We're living in the final part of the last days, undoubtedly the final part of the final part of the last days. This is the end of the world. This is the end of the world.
Hello and welcome to the Last Days live stream, the show that brings welcome levity to the end of the world. Lifting the spirits of many of you, never before has that been so appropriate, that intro. Lifting the spirits of many of you battling boredom, loneliness or anxiety by infecting as many as possible with comfort and distraction as the apocalypse unfolds. Boy, so yes, we're back for season 2 of the Last Days live stream. As promised, we've had a 2-month break, and boy did we pick a date to come back on because it's a little thing called the United States presidential election, which, as things stand, is incredibly close. Apparently, America a little bit undecided as to whether it wants a fascist president for the next 4 years. Apologies if I am obviously biased. I think it's fair to say the whole panel today will be biased, or at least most of us will be. I've made no secret before on this channel as to what I think about the current president. And yeah, expect more commentary along those lines. So if you are of a Republican or Trumpist persuasion, well, watch if you can. If you don't want to, then that's fine. But let me bring in Sasha in Australia. Always good to have an Aussie perspective on things. And we have an American in the form of Eric Wells, who treads a fine line in today's live stream as a representative of recovering from religion in a live stream that's going to be about politics. And and we have Javier Ortiz joining from California.
Good evening, gentlemen.
What could possibly go wrong?
Nothing. We're just packing our bags. And, I was wondering, do you have any extra room in the bunker? Or?
Dude, we've already got the sofas all laid out here in the bunker. We're ready to take on refugees, although as you can see, it is a bit cramped in here. But I am wearing my Captain America t-shirt. I'm here to come to the rescue to the extent possible.
It's never too early.
And we would happily invite you all to come to the relative safety of Australia, but we don't want you bringing all of your damn COVID virus with you. So you can all keep it in the States.
You're going to be sorry you said that.
Oh, God.
So, I mean, it's still really undecided still. So
it's looking like it. God. So as I'm looking at the Sky Sports stats. Sorry, the Sky News stats, and it says on the screen: election too close to call. 220 to Joe Biden, 213 to Donald Trump. But when I'm looking at the battleground states, I mean, from my perspective, you were saying earlier, Javier, that CNN has a conservative forecast for a very narrow Biden win. But when I'm looking at the battleground states, it's looking more like Trump to me.
Yeah, no, they what I said was that they're calling it conservatively,
right? And
that they currently had Biden in the lead,
right?
But yeah, here's my prediction.
Okay,
is all the early voting will be counted in the next 3 days, and there's going to be a surprise flip, and I think it's going to be Pennsylvania. So
you say that, but currently,
after
74% votes have been counted, it's nearly 3 million votes for Trump and 2.3 million votes for Biden. That doesn't look promising.
Yeah, but I think I just saw a stat that said that of the early voting stuff that hasn't been counted yet, it's about 55% of the total vote in Pennsylvania.
Oh, okay.
So
Okay.
I don't know. This is
Thank you for giving me reason for hope.
I'm trying to be optimistic, man. It's look, it's
Yeah.
the last 4 years have not been pleasant. That's the
Yeah.
best way I can describe it here. They've not been
Sure.
pleasant, and I don't know that Biden's going to fix anything, but it'll at least start to feel like it's if he wins that we're going back to some level of normalcy, and that's
Yeah.
what we
I
need
think
that back.
someone said it well. I mean, obviously on
Some
the
level
channel,
of dignity.
on the channel I've spoken about Black Lives Matter, and I think that's like a burning issue right now in America is social justice, and it feels as though Biden would be a sticking plaster, but a sticking plaster is still better than someone actively poking at the wound and trying to inflame it.
Exactly.
So, welcome to Kim and Sherry.
All we
So
need is someone to step up with dignity.
Yeah. Well, Sherry has
would
bags of
settle
dignity.
for a president that can dance. I would.
Eric,
I'm sorry. I'm about halfway through
Eric,
a
your
white
thoughts on Trump's dancing?
That would be a cold day in hell, but rather enjoyable too.
Oh, have you guys not seen like the Lincoln Project on their Twitter page posted a video? It was like a compilation of all of his little dance moves, and I'm telling you, it's like watching a shaved bird do the Macarena, man. It's really bad. And then I just saw like a video of Obama. I think he was stumping for Biden somewhere, and he walked through a gymnasium and he turned around and grabbed the basketball and he shot like a 3-pointer and he scored it. I'm like, man, remember when you had a cool president, you know?
Do you remember what he said to that, Javier? Because I loved it.
He said, "That's what I do."
Yeah, I love it. That's what I do.
That's what I do.
What we're going to try to do is just make this a little bit of an election commentary, because let's face it, that's all most people are thinking about, I would imagine, not just those in America but those elsewhere. I was going to have Brandon on the show to keep an eye on the states declaring. Javier, would you be able to keep an eye on that? I'm not getting. I have a screen that I'm refreshing, but I don't think it's giving me notifications. So. And I think you mentioned that your family are watching the coverage as well, so there may be reaction in the background.
It's funny. I thought so too. I thought they were going to stay up, but I think the anxiety really got to them, and they were just like,
they're currently cowering under their beds. Okay, that's fine. I think that speaks for the attitude of most Americans right now.
They've told me don't come tell us and don't give us any updates. Just tell us tomorrow what happened. That's literally what they said.
I think. Let's try and inject a bit of positivity. And Biden said, Biden did that speech just before he retired for the evening, and just before he went out, Matt Delahunty was saying this could be very ominous. But when Biden came out, he just said, "Keep the faith. We're doing very well. We've just got to keep an eye on the numbers." It was all positivity, and I don't believe that was just fluff. I believe that he was genuinely feeling that once these extra votes are counted, things may change, as you said earlier.
Speaking of positivity, one thing that is needed when there is fear, let's say you fall in the water and you see the spectre of a shark approaching. You're going to be fearful, a little bit like many are fearful right now with this election. And at times such as that, what most people need is a bit of comfort. Well, guess what? We're here to provide you comfort in the form of Sherry's Comfort Corner. Sherry's Comfort Corner.
I have to say, while I've missed you all enormously, I'm not quite sure I've missed that.
I did actually mean to update it to remove the shark. Actually, viewers, let us know in the description, should I take out the shark or does the shark stay? So
We shall see what everybody says. Another vote to have your voice heard in. So, Comfort Corner today, this has been inspired by a few things, most notably the recent Halloween that Sasha and I had so much fun with, even though we had to do it in a COVID-safe way. But it made me think about how when you first leave the organisation, for me personally, I didn't quite know which way was up and what I believed in anymore and what was true and what wasn't, because being a witness, as a lot of our audience will attest to, you're told what to believe and you are told that there is an answer to any question that you have and that question is in the Bible. And even if the question isn't there, there's a principle that can be drawn somewhere. Or maybe you just have to wait on Jehovah and it will all be revealed in the future. Either way, no matter what your questions are, it's dealt with. So when you leave, you have a lot of questions and it's not easy to find the way in which you should learn and how you should come to conclusions and what you should believe. So I wanted to share with everybody something that ties all of that together through this wonderful book, The Skeptic's Guide to the Universe, which I'm enjoying immensely. Great podcast too, by the way, because it helps you work out exactly that, what's real, what's not real, how we can develop critical thinking skills, and how we can decide for ourselves what we believe is true and what we don't believe is true. So particularly having that Halloween thing in the back of your head, the 6th chapter is on a neuropsychological condition called, here we go, Sasha and I had to practice this before we got to it, hypnagogia. Okay, what is hypnagogia? I hear you all asking. So the little chapter, I'm just going to read a few pages to you here briefly. In an interview, actress Jessica Alba recounted a terrifying experience. She says, there was definitely something in my parents' old house. Something definitely took the covers off me and I definitely couldn't get off the bed. I felt this pressure and I couldn't get up. I couldn't scream. I couldn't talk. I couldn't do anything. I don't know what it was. I can't really explain it. Jessica Alba's experience, while certainly unusual, is by no means unique. Perhaps you've experienced something similar. I've had many similar episodes myself, usually when I'm sleep deprived. One moment you're fast asleep, the next you're woken by a sound or a feeling or even a smell that doesn't seem right. Now that you're awake, you find yourself incapable of moving. You can't lift your arms or turn your head. You feel there is something in the room, a nefarious presence, likely unfriendly and certainly uninvited. You gasp for a deep breath, but it feels like something is pressing on your chest, inhibiting your ability to take that breath to call out for help. No matter how hard you try, you can't make a sound. You feel prone and vulnerable at the mercy of what might be causing your powerlessness. Okay, so that all sounds very scary. And as a believing witness, you might jump to certain conclusions and think you have to start saying a name that was picked out of a hat by a 13th century whatever. But there's a logical explanation for this. So as the skeptics tell us, this is a condition called hypnagogia, which is a neurological phenomenon that can occur when a person is waking up or going to sleep. It's an in-between state where the person is neither fully awake nor fully asleep. In this state, very realistic images and sounds can be experienced. Although visual and auditory hallucinations are most common, experiences can range from hearing your name whispered to ones involving all the senses, including touch. They are, in essence, dream experiences that are occurring while you're semi-awake. These waking dreams can be bizarre and terrifying. Also associated with hypnagogia is temporary paralysis, often referred to as sleep paralysis. Regular sleep contains periods of REM, rapid eye movement. Thank you, Abby is just talking to me while we do this.
Abby is not a voice in Sherry's head. Abby is a cat, by the way.
He's just meowing in the background. I'm not sure if the speaker's picking that up. But anyway, REM, back to this, dream sleep, during which the brainstem inhibits the motor neurons in our spinal column, preventing any movement except for the eyes. Normally, this only occurs during dream sleep. The apparent reason for sleep paralysis is our safety. So the rest of the chapter goes into that notion of sleep paralysis being safety. And I know why Abby's crying. He's calling for his brother who's in the room with Sasha.
Oh, okay.
Anywho,
the point is we don't have to worry about goblins and demons and ghosts and that kind of thing.
Yes. And I picked sleep paralysis because it's something that I've experienced a number of times over. And I started to experience it just before I became awake to the truth about the truth. And it was terrifying. I was convinced, actually, that because I was spiritually weak, that it was demons. And it wasn't until after fully waking up and learning about sleep paralysis that I can manage it better. I still get it sometimes, but it's nowhere near as severe as it used to be. So there's always a logical reason for something. And it's
Isn't it interesting that demons, wishing to make contact from a different realm, always choose to do so when it's dark and people are in varying levels of unconsciousness? Isn't that interesting?
Yeah, funny that.
A lot of times, like the whole alien experiences, like alien visitors or probing or something, or those kinds of
aliens.
Yeah, that a lot of that.
I think he said probing as well. I'm interested to, if we could probe that subject a bit more, Eric. Please explain what you mean by probing.
Well, there's quite a few folks who have claimed to have been abducted by aliens, also claimed to have been probed, like have instruments inserted into various orifices in their bodies. Fun times, but a lot of
I thought he meant that they were asked really stern questions.
Yeah, that's what I thought. He's come at me from left field there. I thought it in some kind of interrogation. But no, now we're talking about orifices. Welcome back to the Last Days live stream, where we talk about probing orifices. Please continue, Eric.
Has nobody heard that? Like anal probing is like a thing that so many...
There, we went there. We mentioned
another Trump-related topic.
Okay.
But yeah, this is something that I've actually experienced myself too, and it
good.
not. Oh, wait.
Yeah, hang on a minute. What are you confessing to?
Not really that kind of live stream. So if we could send some notes to Eric in advance of his next appearance.
The hypnagogic, the sleep paralysis. Something that I've experienced myself, and I actually saw like a whole angel form at the foot of my bed, starting from the head and working and like materializing down. And I was freaked out. I had no idea, but it wasn't until I kind of learned about sleep paralysis that I totally made sense. Like, this is something that happens. It's something natural happens. And my body was frozen. I couldn't move anything. My eyes were open, and my brain was still kind of dreaming in the dream state. And I felt so much better and less freaked out. But this angel didn't end up probing me. It was very nice of the angel. But in some sense, it gave me a calming feeling, too. Like, oh, this is my guardian angel. This is something here that was just wanted to say, hey, I'm here to protect you. But it still was really kind of freaky. But
thank you for clarifying. Yeah.
Were you believed back then?
What was the question?
So can you repeat the question? I think that was Sasha.
Were you still a believer? Were you still a Christian back then?
Oh, yes. This was in my mid-teens. So just like, 5 years ago or so.
Yeah.
So we go from probing to the US election. Now, Javier, have you noticed any difference while we've been dealing with probing and compass and that kind of thing?
I have CNN streaming on my screen right now. It hasn't changed.
Okay.
It still has Biden 220 to Trump 213. But Trump has already given a speech from the White House where he's declared himself the winner. And apparently he said something about going to the Supreme Court, and nobody knows what he's referring to, but he's putting it out there.
Trump, usually when a presidential nominee declares victory, they really mean it. But, you know, for someone who lies like he breathes, it kind of doesn't really mean anything, does it? It's like, oh, okay, you know. God.
Yeah,
except what it means to his followers.
It seems like part of like a larger ploy or some sort of something premeditated that they've been working on. Like this, if it looks like he's sliding in the polls, then we can declare victory and pull this legislative trick out of our hat or something like that.
Yeah, I think there's going to be a lot of new things. There's new dynamics to this election, and it all has to do with the early voting stuff and the people voting by mail. And a lot of this stuff is not, you know, coded in any laws or anything like that. So that's what he does. He takes advantage of stuff that's not written to law, and then he gets his attorney general to declare it legal somehow, and then he just gets away with stuff. That's the way he operates. But we'll see. We'll see if it holds up.
What's it like for Americans to see, because this is an election with a difference, obviously that goes without saying, but you know, the images of city centres being boarded up, that must be a little bit nerve-wracking. You know, whichever way this election goes, and arguably the tighter the victory or the tighter the result, which is how it's looking at the moment, the more likelihood there is of some kind of unrest, because the side that doesn't win will feel jilted. I mean, are you nervous about kind of anarchy regardless of who wins?
So I live in California, which is considered a very liberal state. It usually goes for the Democrats in the elections here. But just the last couple of weeks, just not far from where I live, there have been just consistently Trump supporters waving their flags and screaming as people drive by, and I don't see that kind of fanaticism for any. Like, I don't even see lawn signs for the Biden campaign. So it hasn't felt like a liberal state the last couple of weeks, at least locally where I live.
Have you had a lawn sign?
You know what? I ordered a lawn sign and it never came. The campaign people messaged me and I said, yeah, I'll take one, and it never showed up. So I don't know what happened. But yeah, so I am a little bit worried because I don't know. We've never seen this. This is all new, right? We've never had this kind of, you know, the debates have been contentious in the past. The elections have been contentious, like when Bush ran and things like that. But I've never seen it to this level in my lifetime. And so, you know, I'm a little bit concerned, but it could just be because of the uncertainty. So,
Eric, are you anxious?
You know, I'm anxious because I've never been in a position like this. I've never experienced something like this. So it's more of an anxious towards the unknown. I haven't really felt unrest in my neighbors or anything like that, but there's been quite a few folks that I've come across who are Trump supporters that have been concerned about what the world would look like if Biden wins, and they seem to have been fed a lot of fear mongering. I mean, and it's nothing new that that we've seen. It's just the par for the course when it comes to what Donald Trump and his cohorts have been feeding and Fox News and everything. But you know, when I kind of first started hearing and seeing images of stores boarding up and security being increased, it just was kind of shocking to me. With the Civil War, in some sense, we had a clear defining line, like there's a north and a south. Now, sure, there's some south, but how do we tell a difference? Like, where are these sides going to be drawn? It just seems so weird to me. But I this is something totally new, and that newness and uncertainty kind of makes me anxious. And through these 4 years, I've learned to kind of expect the unexpected, or learn that what normally happens isn't what's going to happen. So it's just, I don't know.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. It's not even as simple as a north-south. I mean, as I'm looking at the electoral map as things stand, you have currently the whole western seaboard as declared for Joe Biden. You have most of the eastern seaboard states above North Carolina. Obviously, North Carolina isn't done deciding yet. But do you understand that it's even kind of, you have states in the north, for example, like Minnesota, Illinois, where they voted for Biden. So it's just so fractured, and it's not even along clearly identifiable geographic lines, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and there's counties within these states that are consistently blue, consistently voted for.
As Seth Andrews says, divided states.
Yeah, usually it's the urban areas where even in conservative states, the urban areas tend to lean more blue, I guess. But yeah, it's the Electoral College works a certain way, so
yeah. And I think there's currently an act in Congress to shift from the Electoral College to the popular vote, away from the Electoral College and towards the popular vote, kind of get rid of this 200-year-old way of voting that doesn't necessarily represent the majority.
I think there's a movement trying to make that happen, but it'll never happen unless the Democrats control the Senate and the House, because it'll never. At least I think since before the Gore election, Republicans have maybe one election they've won the popular vote. Like it is not to their advantage to step out of the Electoral College system.
Right.
So
it's a similar situation in the UK as well, where it all goes off constituencies rather than necessarily how many votes. So yeah. Many thanks to Rianne for your super chat. So happy this live stream is back. Love and hugs, and especially thanks to all of you. Great to see Eric on the panel. Yes, he was regaling us with some very interesting anecdotes. Recent. Going where no other panelist has previously dared to go. So yes, can we just talk a little bit about COVID? Because that situation has worsened. It kind of relates, doesn't it, to the election? Because obviously, I mean, I guess it's no secret that Trump's handling of the pandemic has been less than desirable, and has, many would argue, contributed to the deaths of many more Americans than should have died. But that situation globally has really escalated, hasn't it? I mean, here in Europe, I don't know whether you'd even call it a second or third spike. It just seems to me as though, we got the first kind of round of coronavirus out of the way, and kind of were patting ourselves on the back at having almost seen it off. And then coronavirus was like, wait until you see what I've got in store, and has come back with a flourish. And now Croatia is among one of the worst countries in Europe, having been first time round one of the best countries for handling it. We're now kind of feeling very under siege here, Deanna and myself. And sorry, there's a lot of noise going on. And yeah, so we, as many of you will know, recently Jessica's teacher tested positive for COVID, and as a result, Jessica had to go into self-isolation. Fortunately, neither her nor her 7 classmates have been showing any signs of symptoms. So we're hoping that we've escaped. But it's just a reminder, really, of just how how easy it is for this horrid pathogen to find you, you know. So I don't know what your thoughts are, panel, on how COVID has been developing.
Well, I think that it is very easy to tell that many of us are experiencing just pandemic fatigue, if that's a thing. Like, we've been in this for so long, we're kind of getting a little bit worn out of, and I think that just like isolating and being alone, and we're getting zoomed out or what have you. But and in some sense, we are naturally just kind of dropping our defenses, I think, and we're just tired and exhausted of what we're going through. And it's, obviously there's a lot more going on than just COVID, and that's contributing to this fatigue. But I'm noticing it happening just in myself as well. It's like, I have to go get my mask or something like that. I'm like, no, I got to stay vigilant and got to protect other people. But yeah, there's just definitely the fatigue kind of setting in for me.
I can remember in the early days kind of commenting that the only real country, at least to begin with, where there was kind of COVID denial in any noticeable numbers was in America, but that has since gone global to the point where, when we Deanna and I kind of feel slightly surrounded by. I won't use the phrase that most people are using to describe people who deny COVID, but you know what I mean. There's so many people who still think it's a hoax, even though over 1 million people have died from it. And that's been a very interesting phenomenon. And you could argue largely on the side of people who would normally vote Conservative, you know. So that's been kind of exacerbating things, hasn't it?
What are the numbers in Croatia right now, like roughly?
Coronavirus. So let me just bring up the stats for you. So for Croatia, it's 54,000 cases since it began and 628 deaths, which 628 doesn't sound bad, but we're a small country. There's been 10 deaths in our county, which again, you think, oh, that's not too bad. But again, it's a very small county. We have basically just our one local town, and then it's just outlying villages. So
what's Croatia's population, Lloyd?
5 million.
Wow.
Goodness me. So that puts it into context.
Yeah.
That's not good.
Well, no, that's not good at all, because Australia, we've got 25 million population. We've had...
It's basically the same as Sydney.
Yeah.
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 That's insane.
So you're saying that the culture of people who are inclined to deny it or take it less than seriously tends to parallel those who are conservative or religious. We've noticed very few sort of deniers here in Australia. There has been some rallies and so on, but that's not necessarily tied up to the religious side here. Here it's all about people stepping on their human rights. People are objecting to the fact that they're being told what to do by big power. And again, they're failing to see that this is actually for their protection. This is for their safety. This is not about taking away your rights. This is about giving you the rights to life.
Yeah. My constituency back in the UK, where I grew up, they have a Conservative MP, and she recently went on Twitter saying that she's going to vote against a second lockdown in Parliament. So it's not even just, I mean, Conservative is the ruling party in the UK, and they have MPs who are basically saying, no, it's more important that the economy is okay, never mind people dying. It's a very, very worrying when people put money ahead of lives. And someone was commenting, lives and livelihood are the same things. If people don't have a livelihood, then they don't have lives. It's like, no, sorry, you can't have a livelihood if you're dead.
Yeah.
So,
and it's not only that, it's the strain that it puts on the healthcare system.
Yeah.
And if you are a young person and your chances of getting COVID are quite small, or if you do get it, you're going to recover, if you need hospital care, do you want to be going to the hospital when it is full to the brim of COVID patients and where they do not have the resources to look after you at all? Or would you rather be in a place where they've got COVID under control and they have enough resources to look after everybody else's normal stuff that happens day to day, car accidents, all the things that happen in life? You want to have access to those services and not have it all consumed by a pandemic. It's so short-sighted to think that it's just about the economy.
Indeed.
I'm off my soapbox now.
No, it comes down to that thing we often talk about. Sorry?
In Australia, is there a sense of pretty much like kind of, it's the feeling I have here where it doesn't matter what the government decides that they're going to do or not do. Like, the only way we're going to get through this is by making the decisions ourselves. Like, we determine how we're going to handle this COVID crisis, if we're going to wear protective equipment, if we're going to isolate, and like, it doesn't matter what anybody says. Like, we're going to do it. Our, is that kind of the sentiment going around? That's how I feel it here. But
it depends on the state. So in Victoria, when they had their quite large second spike, which they've only really gotten into control in the last few weeks, and they've come out of stage 4 lockdown, they mandated mask wearing. And so it just had to be, no matter where you went, you had to wear a mask as soon as you stepped outside. Other states haven't mandated mask wearing, but they've strongly encouraged it or recommended it. So in New South Wales, it's not mandated, except if social distancing isn't possible. So if you're on public transport, then it would be wise to wear a mask. In healthcare, the healthcare across the board, all doctors, all practices have said you get temperature checked when you arrive and you wear a mask, and all the staff have to wear masks. And that's just, it's been enforced, I suppose, by each employer or by each business, by each retail or restaurant. They've got guidelines that the government has put in place, but some places are actually going above and beyond that and are enforcing more measures. And it's your choice as a consumer then if you're going to go to those places that enforce it and if you're going to obey that. We have had a few Karens.
But generally, Australia has done very well, and generally the community, and I'm not just saying that because I'm biased toward my country, I'm just looking purely at the statistics. We're now at a situation where there's less than 5 or 6 cases per day reported and 0 deaths. I mean, we've done it hard. In Victoria, people who lived in the state of Victoria, they had to do it very hard for a long period, 8 weeks or so, and you know, our heart goes out to them. But they got there. They now have no more cases. There's no more spikes. There's no more deaths. So it's very clear to see that countries like New Zealand, with fantastic leadership, female leadership, who took the job seriously, they fixed the issue. Australia, we fixed the issue. And we still need to be cautious. We need to be very careful when our borders are opened again and so forth. But it shows that it can be done if there's a united effort. And the thing that really encouraged me was looking at the way Australia worked together. All of the states got together. All of the ministers, didn't matter what side of politics they were on, got together to form a task force to handle things well. And yeah, there's been a little bit of argy-bargy, but generally they've been really
Argy-bargy.
Yeah.
One of my favourite Australian phrases.
But they worked really well together, and look at the result.
Kim, do you think there's slightly a problem here of when a country gets on top of coronavirus and the cases come down and the deaths come down, there's a little bit of complacency sets in, and then that's the door through which coronavirus can then enter again, and people are caught off guard, and we start all over again. That it feels like that's what happened in Europe. My concern is that it could just keep happening that way until basically there's a vaccine.
Yeah, look, I think that happened in Australia a little bit. We sort of seemed to get everything under control, and then all of a sudden we had a second wave, and it wasn't anything like other countries have experienced. But I think we did get a bit complacent, and you know, just going on what you guys were talking about previously, what Eric was saying. I don't know about Sherry and Sasha, but I'm absolutely sick to the back teeth with restrictions and requirements, and you sort of get a bit, like, you know, it just becomes a pain. And and I can't go here, can't go there, can't do this, can't do that. So you sort of don't go anywhere, which is really, really boring. Although my garden looks good. So yeah, I think that because we got fairly well, like, you know, we had that second wave, I think a lot of people then went, oh, hang on. And a lot more people are voluntarily doing the right thing by choice, because they don't want to get locked down again, and because we're just getting freedom back. And so we're sort of sick of being told you can't do this, you can't do that. But I am concerned. The Australian government have started doing these travel bubbles. With New Zealand, it's fine, no problems. But, you know, they're talking about doing it with other countries and, you know, Singapore and a few other countries. And I think that's where it becomes dangerous, because we can control who comes from Singapore, but we don't know where those people came from before they came to Singapore and who they were in contact with. And I think that the Australian government, I understand that there's an economy and we have, you know, a large portion of our budget is foreign, you know, travel, et cetera, but I think that perhaps that's a little bit premature, given that other countries haven't gotten to where we are. I think that we've gotten a bit complacent, and the government are trying to push it a little bit too hard.
I have it on reliable authority that one surefire way of combating the coronavirus is to inject bleach. Speaking of said authority, any movement at all on the numbers, Javier?
No, I think there have been no movements. They're just updating on the percentage of the votes that have been counted, and I don't think we're going to see that change till the morning. So. Oh,
okay. So it's basically static now, is it?
It's been static now for a couple hours.
Okay.
I'm sorry?
Sorry, do they continue counting through the night, or does it just start again at sometime in the morning?
So I understand that they keep counting through the night, and then states like Pennsylvania were given 3 days to finish their early voting counts, which so.
Also, this really will drag on for days.
It can, from everything I've seen, it can drag on for a couple of days.
Okay. So
going back to what Sasha and Sherry and Kim were talking about, with like how the different states kind of came together and worked together. That is not what we're seeing here in the U.S. We have some state governors having mask mandates, and then we have others that are just like, do what you want. And then in those states, then there's specific cities who are then mandating masks, and others that aren't. And it's very chaotic. We have I've felt that we don't have the kind of leadership we really need to get past this. And it's kind of interesting to me, thinking like one city is going to have a mask mandate and then a neighboring one won't, or there's a couple dotted throughout the metro area that's got a mask mandate. It's kind of like swimming in a pool and saying, hey, it's okay if you pee in that part, because it's not going to affect the rest of the pool. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Does that add to the frustration too? Do you think if there was consistency across the entire country, that would alleviate some of the frustration?
Not only would it alleviate the frustration, but we would see our numbers starting to go down. Yeah. We just hit a milestone where we had more than one case of COVID contracted every second here in the U.S. Every second.
I mean,
they're saying
oh, sorry, go ahead.
Sorry. There's a saying we have in Australia, there's no place for politics in the pandemic. And there's two major parties in Australia, the Liberal Party and the Liberal National. We were trying to work out whether that's Democrats or Republicans today. We couldn't work it out. But anyway, so there's a mandated universal agreement sort of thing between the two political parties and the National Party, like some of the more minor parties where, there's no place for politics. So you can't get up there and go, this and that. It just, if you did, you'd lose your seat in the next election, because that's just the way we are.
The only thing that we have seen is one or two states standing their ground, but not in defiance, but in extra cautionary steps. Yeah. So Western Australia, the largest landmass state of Australia, has done surprisingly well and they have kept a hard lockdown of their borders, and other states are asking them to lock down, but they've said, no, we've got it under control, and they've held to their ground. And I have no problem with that, because why would they want to bring in a problem? But you're right, with all the other things, nobody is pushing back too much and telling people to take risks. They're kind of respecting those who take a hard, decisive line to protect the people within their community and under their power.
Yeah, because it doesn't, I think the way the Australian people look at it is, politics doesn't matter. It's not, it's what the health advice says, it's what the professionals say, it's what the scientists say, it's the facts. It's not, I don't mean to be rude, I'm not involved in American politics, but seriously, Donald Trump, really, it's the word according to Donald in terms of COVID, not what the professionals and the experts are saying. I don't mean to offend anybody, sorry.
The guy won't even, he can't say without any objection or qualifying. He can't just say, please wear masks, it can save lives. He'll say, yeah, sure, I support the mask, but there's a lot of people that say that you don't need the mask. Like the message from the top is not consistent. And,
right, and in line with that, why doesn't he defer to those who have spent 45 years as scientists specializing in pandemics and in disease control, and allow Dr. Fauci to do the job that he is well qualified for, rather than criticizing him?
And I it's obvious that my political leanings are a certain thing. So I'm trying to be objective when I criticize his handling of the pandemic. But if there's anything that would help show some perspective on it, I commented it on Twitter, that Alex Gibney film, Totally Under Control. I don't know if you guys have watched it, but I mean, he breaks it down, and it's a lot has to do from the point of view of the medical professionals and what their opinions have been, what the advice to the administration has been, how he's handled it. And basically, because they politicized the issue, they've fumbled the way they've handled this pandemic. Like, if they took politics out of it for a second, or even if they didn't take it out, if they put it into a lower priority than saving lives, it could have been a drastically different result. And again, I'm not saying that I think Biden would have done a much.
Well, he wouldn't have scrapped the pandemic task force that was set up under the Obama administration.
Exactly.
Yeah, and I think he would be more likely to defer to the experts.
Yes.
And consult with them on their decision making. And there were little things, like if you watch the film, there were things about just the testing, like how having the available testing would have helped us get ahead of this and be able to trace everything and figure out where it was spreading from human to human contact instead of where it was coming from. It was just a matter of kind of bypassing the red tape and saying, hey, look, for this test, you could eliminate this portion of the test that's causing an issue and just conduct the test differently. If he would have just fast-tracked that, it was something that he could have done with the power of his pen.
Yes.
The stats could be drastically different than they are, and he did.
And you make a good point there too.
Go ahead, sorry.
Sorry. I was just saying, you make a good point, because at the end of the day, the professionals, the scientists, the medical professionals, the frontline workers are the ones that have to be there to mop up the pieces. And it will be a show of respect to these ones to do whatever they recommend so that they can do their job more effectively. And I think it's important, as we did with our initial live streams, just to take the opportunity to thank those who work at the front line, because what they are doing is probably things that we can't even comprehend as lay people, and the work they have to undergo. And then on top of that, we add a political firestorm on top of them trying to just take care of people. So to those who work in the frontline response, whether it's medical or any other related field, we really appreciate what you've been doing.
Absolutely. I look at Fauci, how outstanding has he been? I mean, that really is leadership. When you think of the guy standing there at press briefings, having to hear what Trump is saying, trying to keep a poker face, mostly succeeding, sometimes not so much. But then he's got to come and speak to the nation afterwards and give a message of what he just said was absolute rubbish, but do it in a very professional way. I mean, honestly, Fauci, a weaker person would have quit many months back, and yet somehow he's kept going. I look at him and think, wow, what a guy.
And now
what
his
a guy.
family is under threat because
that's one of the things that the film highlights is because Fauci has made mistakes, right? But those are the people that are in the best position to help you make informed decisions if you're the leader of the country, right? And but one of the things that the film highlights is that some of these people who didn't agree with the president, they didn't agree with his decisions, they felt an obligation to stay in their positions because they felt that they were kind of the barrier to some really, really horrible political or decisions made for political reasons. And even if they could just postpone those or intervene in some way or appeal to someone in the administration to reason, they stayed in those positions. And what happened to a lot of those guys, there's some senior guys that were basically, they disagreed with the president, and then he axed them, he got rid of them. But imagine, you being in a situation where you're like, I gotta be the middleman to prevent this guy from doing something really crazy. Like that's, and so they also interview like a lot of the medical professionals who have never dealt with a pandemic at this level, and you hear them talk about the experiences, the people that they're treating, the people that are dying, the uptick in just deaths from the normal rate of death that they experience just through the everyday work. I mean, you're right. Yeah, we owe them a great debt for being in the front lines of all this.
Given that we're in for potentially days of indecision and panic and anxiousness, I wonder if we can talk a little bit about coping mechanisms. I mean, obviously, none of us are psychologists, none of us are mental health experts, but yeah, there's one coping mechanism, Javier.
The coping
but we can at least share our own ideas as to how to get through seemingly hopeless situations from our non-professional perspectives. Before we do that, I just feel as though there's something missing in this particular live stream, something that's dragging us down and stopping us from elevating ourselves to the next intellectual level. And I think what's missing is a little bit of sophistication, a little bit of culture in the form of some poetry.
Meanwhile, I've got a cat behind me.
Yeah.
There's the way to deal with...
Not off to a great start, to be honest.
No.
Never work with animals and children.
That's true. All right. Well, this one, I give credit to my writing partner, Arthur, for this. He and I worked together on this one. So don't worry, I'm not going to sing it, though. So for all of you, you'll sing along with Arthur in future episodes. All right. Well, it's the time of the election in the US of A, and as the world anxiously watches, what can we say? The outcome will affect generations to come if things swing to positivity or just come all undone. Many say the chances for Trump to get honestly re-elected are less likely than it is to see my grandpa resurrected, because Donald as a president is equally as phony as other cult-like leaders like Stephen and Tony. So rather than being on Zoom and watching the JW convention, we hope you all went out and cast your vote in the election, because voting for your future is not a disfellowshipping offence, well, unless you voted for the clown and his right-hand man Pence. So citizens of the US, please get ready to dump this toxic cult-like leader named Donald J. Trump, so the world can move forward and once again create an atmosphere of change and move past this tension and hate.
Very nice. Well done, Sasha. Always lovely to have your your eloquent words gracing our live stream. I
feel like he should have a pipe and a monocle.
You see, there was just something on the tip of my tongue, and you've nailed it there, Javier. So if you could have a few more props to hand for future Poetry Corners, Sasha, that would be helpful.
See what we can do.
Coping mechanisms. I have a few thoughts in mind, but does anyone want to go first? What's the best way of getting through a hopeless situation?
I found getting up and walking, doing some physical exercise of some sort, not like necessarily going to the gym and pumping iron, but like just getting up and not sitting on the couch. During the early days of the quarantine, I was like most of you guys, I was just getting frustrated and like, I got to get out of this house. Even though I'm an introvert and love kind of just being by myself, I still kind of had this like pent up feeling. And so we grabbed a basketball, and there was no school going on, and we walked to a schoolyard and just kind of was shooting hoops for an hour or so, and then walked back. And I felt much better. I felt in a much clearer headspace, just getting some physical activity going. My wife and I would walk around the block in the evening too, and that helped out quite a bit. So yeah, physical exercise or physical activity.
Renato is agreeing with you there. Exercise, exercise, exercise. Devon favours playing with cats. Presumably your own cats, not just someone else's cats. Always get the consent of the cat owner before playing with them.
Cat playing.
And I think it's also fair to say that we need to recognise that we can't necessarily do it on our own. So if there's people that we can confide in and even just drop a message and say, I'm struggling today, feel free to do that, because everybody needs to, well, the old expression is, are you okay? Well, we don't really know if someone's okay unless we ask. And often we need a prompt. And, I take my hat off and with appreciation to those that have reached out to me, for instance, because I have become very obsessed and consumed with the outworking of what's happening, knowing that what happens in the States affects the rest of the world. There's no accident that, the expression exists, if America catches a cold, the whole world, if America sneezes, the whole world catches a cold. Well, we know that this is tough, and so it's been hard, but I appreciate those that take the initiative to reach out, and then that in turn gives us the strength to reach out to others. But nothing can come close to professional help. And I think, Eric, you work along well with Recovering from Religion and the related group, Secular Therapy Project. What place can proper therapists have as we cope with these things, perhaps?
What's kind of neat is that the medical field has really adjusted fairly well to the pandemic, where they're doing more and more telehealth, where it's just like this. They're meeting clients over Zoom or some other platform. And the same thing for psychologists and psychiatrists, either over the phone or over a video chat. And it's been something that they've wanted to do, but they're finally been forced to do it. And it's been very, very successful. And both the clients and the mental health professionals are really enjoying it and getting a good benefit out of it. So the Secular Therapy Project, like you were talking about, Sasha, at seculartherapy.org, is where you can find folks who have mental health professionals who've been vetted to make sure that they run a secular practice and that they run an evidence-based practice, and connect with those therapists with specific needs that you want to address, and get those worked out.
Yeah, so obviously professional help is the ultimate coping mechanism. If you're really struggling with a sense of dread, of fear and anxiety, seek out professional help. But
marijuana, lots of marijuana.
Drugs, basically. Drug yourself and drink. Seems to be the overriding message so far.
Of course I kid. But
Lloyd, you did some research.
I'm sorry?
What was the things you came up with, Lloyd? You said that you'd done some research too? into some?
Oh, I have some thoughts. I'm interested to hear from the panel first. Did you have some ideas, Javier?
Exercise is always good. So, Lloyd, you guys all know Joel, my brother. He's a big boxing aficionado.
Unfortunately, yes. Yeah.
And he pretty much upgraded my garage into a boxing gym. So he's put a speed bag up there. We got a 160-pound heavy bag. We have some free weights and dumbbells and all that stuff, and a stationary bicycle. And so all of us, my daughters, Joel comes pretty much every night, and he works out in there. I do it about 3 or 4 times a week. My big concern has been checking in on my girls, on my daughters, because they're at home from school. They just today was their first day back physically at school. So I've been checking in on them to make sure that, they get some outdoors time and they're not just cooped up in their rooms, for stretches of days at a time. And it's funny, right? Because I think when you're an ex Jehovah's Witness, you in a certain way, you kind of been molded and adapted to kind of function in a little bit of isolation, and we've been fortunate that we've been thriving, but we have been trying to make sure that we're aware of that and following up with each other, checking in with each other and other people, and staying connected. But it hasn't been as bad as it could be for some people, at least in my experience. But yeah, if you can do any of those things and loads of marijuana, you're gonna be all right. I'm kidding, by the way.
Arthur is saying that there's been some movement in the figures, but when I refresh my screen, I don't see any change.
Yeah, I don't. I saw. I think Eric posted that the Associated Press was reporting that Arizona, they gave Arizona to Biden.
Right.
But CNN is still being conservative, and they haven't budged on the 220, 213 number. So
maybe Arizona are a bit closer to being decided. Okay. Kim, do you have any coping mechanisms for us?
I could go on for days. Literally, there's a couple of things you can do. There's a heap of online like little therapy courses you can do, acceptance commitment therapy, CBT courses, DBT courses. There's a whole heap, and they're free. So if you're interested in that, go for it. There's heaps of different things that they teach you on there about coping strategies, breathing, etc., etc. But there is one thing that I did want to bring up, because for those who don't know, I have an existing mental health condition, very well controlled. But this week I've had a bit of a shocker. Because I was contacted by an ex-JW who was my friend, and he was, talking to me, and he knows I'm disassociated, and I thought, oh, this is great, it's I'm fine. I'd love to chat with him. Maybe he's awake. Maybe I can talk to him. Maybe he wants my help, and of course, he just wanted me to go back to the organisation, which was extremely sad and disappointing. And I realised that because of what's going on with COVID, and because I'm sort of feeling a bit flat, and because we're all sort of struggling a little bit, that this hit me pretty hard. What really, really hit me hard was today I received 2 handwritten letters in the letterbox from Jehovah's Witnesses that I knew, who, again, were encouraging me to come back to the organisation and putting in little brochures.
Oh, good grief.
And that sort of thing. And it really knocked me out. So I think one thing that I would say is try and be aware of where you're at. Check in with yourself. I didn't realise that I was quite as sort of affected as what I was. And I don't know if everyone knows, there's a letter writing campaign going on starting now. So just be prepared, think ahead, be prepared, get a plan in place. If you're starting to feel a bit flat, how do you plan? What do I do? Who do I call? Do I exercise? Do I do this? Get a plan. Because if you're feeling a little bit fragile, you don't always think straight, and I certainly didn't. So that's my encouraging thing.
Yeah. No, we feel for you, Kim.
Are they kind of counting their time writing to you? I thought they're only supposed to count their time if it's someone who isn't baptized. How does that work?
No, they're counting time. And
just for everything.
It made me feel really grubby and like dirty, that I'd feel like I'd been used. And we know, like, coming out of the organisation, we know that we're all being used. Like, that's just a fact. And yeah, it just made me feel really, really grubby. But then I thought, well, you know what? I've planted some seeds. I didn't offer. He asked for my opinion on why did you leave. I got to talk about the Royal Commission, a few bits and pieces. I could have been way worse, but I just was trying to be restrained and respectful. But he asked, so I told him. And, you know, I've planted some seeds. Whether they grow or not, I don't really care. That's up to him to wake up if he wants to. But I put it out there, and yeah, but it was hard. It was tough.
Well, there's any number of reasons that you could give, but bottom line, it's not true. And I think that this is the central argument, I think, for anyone who's saying, oh, come back to Jehovah, or any of these nonsense kind of apologetics you get. I always try and drag them back to because they don't like being dragged back to this issue, because let's face it, for them, it doesn't really matter whether it's true or not. It's about how it makes them feel, because that's the way the propaganda trains them to think, oh, who cares whether it's true or not? How does it make you feel? So I'm all about dragging them back to this central issue of, yes, but is it true or not? They don't like being dragged back to that issue. And bottom line, I am not going to waste my time with anything that's not true. So if you want me to come back, you prove to me that it's true, and we'll have that conversation, you know? And for the record, if anyone's watching this as a Jehovah's Witness and you have proof that your religion is true, come on the channel and we'll have a respectful conversation about it. I would love that.
Me too.
Yeah.
I just simply said I don't believe in the organisation. I'm not going to argue about religion. I don't really know, you know, like I don't care about, you know, anyone's religious belief. I respect everyone's right to believe whatever they like or not, or I don't care. The organisation is what I don't believe in, and I told him so. I told him about them, you know, that I know about the money, and it's not what I signed up for. That organisation is not what I thought they were, and so for that simple reason, I'm not interested, and that's it. And but yeah, when you catch you off guard, and particularly because we're a bit flat, I mean, I'm flat, I don't know, you know, check in with yourself, because I didn't realise how flat I was, and it hit me really hard, really tough.
I'm sorry you went through that, Kim, and it's good that you were able to stand your ground with boundaries.
Yeah.
And I think that's so important. And anybody who listens to Seth Andrews' weekly podcast, Thinking Atheist, this week he had an episode that talked about how we also have the right to give our opinion back, because we've all often sit there and we allow others to preach at us with their views, whether it be political or religious. You know, those people took the initiative to contact you to tell you that you were wrong and that you needed to come back to the religion. And we tend to sit there and go, well, I'll just keep quiet. I don't want to offend, you know. Yeah, it's not my place to upset. But they've not respected your boundaries. And so Seth Andrews is saying in the podcast, there's nothing wrong with respectfully also drawing a line in the sand and pushing back against that and saying, well, no, I don't appreciate that, or giving a counter to the comments that they offer.
Yeah. Oh, I was going to mention one other thing as well. Live in the moment. You know, if you do go somewhere or whatever, enjoy it. I got to go to a wedding last weekend, which is a COVID wedding, which was really bizarre. No dancing, no this, that, whatever. But I still enjoyed myself, you know, and I got talking to people I'd never spoken to before. Live in the moment, enjoy it. And I also want to say that for all of the Australians watching, go the Blues. It's State of Origin night tonight. So Queensland playing New South Wales. It's a very big deal. Huge. So, you know, you've got to enjoy the good things.
Yeah.
You reminded me of Dave Warnock when you said that, live in the moment. If for those that haven't heard of Dave Warnock,
Carpe
Google him
TFDM.
and find out. Yeah,
That's
he's
the one,
awesome. Dying out loud. But yeah, the Carpe DFDM. It's awesome.
Live in the moment.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Many
and
thanks
to my bestie, because he goes for Queensland. So
many thanks to Rianne for another super chat. The most encouraging news for me is that my brother found his way out. And for me and my family. Congratulations, Rianne. Always very sweet, isn't it, when we're able to reconnect on the other side with those that we knew. That's actually one thing that I kind of regret, is that I think back to how many people I knew and who knew me when I was a JW, and there's maybe only a dozen who who I know have made it out and or are in contact with me. And considering I knew hundreds of people, I sometimes think, gosh, there's still so much work to do. But let's grab every victory that we can grab. As for coping mechanisms, I've been giving this a lot of thought, not just recently, but kind of more over the last 2 or 3 years. Because I'm very concerned about what's happening politically at the moment, not just in the United States, but in the UK as well. As many will know, I now have dual citizenship. I'm now both British and Croatian. And one of the things that's really spurred me to pursue Croatian citizenship is seeing what's happening back in the UK. I feel as though I increasingly don't recognize the country that I grew up in. And I can imagine lots of Americans will be able to relate to that feeling of thinking you know roughly what your country stands for, and just result after result or development after development kind of confounds this idea and makes you think, actually, no, that's not the country. There's something going wrong here. I'm going to illustrate this with my support of football. Many of you will know that I am a fan of Manchester United. Manchester United for many years, well, they remain the team with the most league wins, but for many years, very, very successful, the most successful team arguably for a couple of decades. But ever since the last manager stepped down, it's been terrible results, very, very few victories. And it's been depressing as a United fan to watch that. But I'm beginning to think of it in these terms. If you think about my attention and my care about these things being like a currency, how much currency am I giving to something, and how much am I getting back in return? I'll always follow Man United because it's in my blood, but they're just a company. They're just a bunch of guys that run around on a grass pitch. They don't care about me. So I need to think, I can't get too wound up in results. And it's a little bit like that with politics as well. We do the best we can when it comes to our civic duty. Javier, you were posting yesterday about voting, going to your local office or wherever it is and voting, presumably for Biden. We do what we can with the power that we've been given, but ultimately, the way I see it is, we're all just passengers in history. History is going to unfold, how it's unfolding, irrespective of whether I exist or not. So I'm really, I do what I can to the extent I can do something, but ultimately I'm a spectator. History's going to unfold regardless. It would be the same as if I'd been alive in Nazi Germany through the 30s and 40s. Irrespective of how much I hated Hitler, it's still, Europe's still going to go up in flames, You just have to do the best that you can with the hand that you're dealt and try to protect as much as possible those around you and try to get as much joy and meaning out of life as possible and try not to get too emotionally invested in things that you simply cannot control. Right. We like to think we can control the election because we have a vote, but ultimately that's not true. We have a responsibility to do what we can with the vote we're given, but that doesn't mean we're in control of anything. We're just spectators. So try not to get too wound up and try not to get too emotionally invested. Think of your emotions as your currency, and don't go throwing your emotions at things that really don't care about you or who you are as a person. That's kind of my philosophy.
Yeah, well said. Well said. Thank you.
Good advice.
Yeah, and that really picks up on that well-known expression, control the things you can control and don't worry about the things that you can't. So if it's in the power of your hand to fix one thing or to have a say with a vote, great, but you're right, we can't fix everything. Great advice, Lloyd. Thank you.
Worry
I will
is a
say
rocket
this, Lloyd.
that can get you anywhere.
There's a saying in the States here that says all politics are local. And so it's easy to get wrapped up into like the politics on a national level when it's the presidential elections or whatever, the big show. But if Biden loses, right, and we need to feel better about ourselves, I think good advice would be how can we get involved locally in our neighborhoods, in our communities? There's opportunities to make a difference locally that might kind of lessen that impact. So
if Biden loses and you voted for Biden, he would have lost anyway, irrespective of how you voted. It's again, history is unfolding. You can only have control over your own sphere, over your own family, maybe have a little bit of influence in your own community, and try to make the world a better place in the microscopic way that you can. But don't go feeling in any way guilty that you could have done more, or this is somehow your fault. I think we can be tricked into thinking that, because obviously politicians say, vote, everyone should vote. And they're right, you should vote because it's your responsibility. But don't go one step further and then think that if the vote doesn't go the way you wanted, it's your fault in some way. You've done your best. It's nothing to do with you.
Yeah, be proud of the fact that you took a stand for something that was important and that you felt strongly about. And this is all part of a wave of momentum. Things don't happen overnight. But let's be proud of the things that we have accomplished if we took a particular stand on a particular issue in politics. And who knows what comes in the future. The most important thing is not to then give up and think, oh, well, it's all lost, let's just forget about it. Be mindful that it takes a while for things to happen sometimes, for change to happen.
Sasha, is this your way of retracting the invitation to Australia? Because
hell no.
No, you're all welcome to come to the land flowing with milk and honey. Sheep and
with snakes and spiders.
Yeah, that's it.
Well, here in the States, a lot of people kind of tell their kids, like, oh, you can grow up and you can be anything you want, even president. And kind of what they don't say is, like, you can grow up and you can be the governor of your state. You can be the mayor of your city. You can sit on the council or be an alder person. And so those types of, like what Javier was saying, those types of local politics really make a big deal. In fact, there's a couple of secular organizations out here that have shifted their focus and their resources from the federal government to the state and to the local governments, and are getting a lot more results doing that, as opposed to the gridlock and hard-headedness that's just happening in Washington, D.C. And so, kid, you can grow up, you can be the mayor of your town, you could be a council person, you don't have to be president, and you can still make a huge difference, like what Lloyd was saying, in your own sphere of influence.
The national politics is a huge, gigantic, slow-moving machine. And so sometimes, if you want to feel like you have some control or some impact in your community at the local level, it's easier to get that. But it was great advice, guys.
Speaking of community and how we can help people, and I often think that it's important just to look at the individuals that we've helped. I've got to give a massive shout out of appreciation to ones like Eric, who work hard with recovering from religion, because there's an example of how the hard work you put into a community, in this case, a community of people who are looking for support, breaking free from religious oppression, and we see their lives being improved for the better. Or the work that you've been doing, Lloyd, for a decade, helping people individually reclaim their lives. That's huge. And so we might not feel we've got the power to move everything on a social scale or a political scale, but we are literally helping individual lives each and every day with the work that we do through all these organizations.
And I think, maybe I speak for you, Eric, I don't expect everyone to be able to do what I can do. I've fallen on an extremely fortuitous set of circumstances with the resources and tools that I have, and I'm doing the best I can, supported by some extraordinary people, including Deanna, including my family. I'm doing what I can do with the tools I've been given. I don't expect everyone to do what I can do, and people shouldn't feel guilty if they can't do what I can do, or they can't do what Eric can do. We all do the best with the hand that we're dealt, and ultimately our one responsibility is to find peace and happiness and joy in our lives, no matter what that is. If you can make the world a slightly better place than you left it, fantastic. If for you it's just about surviving and getting through the day, that's also cool.
Yeah.
You know, that's my attitude.
Lloyd, you're reminding me.
That's
of,
much more powerful when
Yeah.
when you're wearing a Captain America shirt, by the way.
Yes. It's a shame the thumbnail's already been sorted out, but yeah.
So I was going to mention that towards the end of The Reluctant Apostate, you paint the scenario of a bridge, and that activists like yourself, Ray Franz, Paul Grundy, you're all on the bridge to help people make that transition over. And that's really, really important that you fill that role. I noticed today on your Discord channel that a few were commenting that they're not binge watching as much as they used to, that they're feeling more secure, more at ease. And I mean, that's the goal, isn't it? That's really what we're wanting to accomplish, is you're wanting to be able to help people through this difficult time, and then off you go live your life. And so I was really happy to see that on Discord. There were about 3 that I saw that were all making this comment on how they're not binging anymore. And they had this little conversation amongst themselves, acknowledging that, hey, we're not really activists, but this is what we do. We share what we can with people that we come into contact with to share our experience with them. And they were all okay with that. I'm like, go, that's fantastic.
That's the ironic thing, is that I'm obviously a YouTuber and I'm in the business of trying to get as many views as possible. And yet when people approach me, including my patrons, and say, I've watched every single one of your videos, I'm like, really? I mean, even the one where I'm counting my Bibles? I mean, they're not all good. Don't watch all of them.
Tell them to get a life.
I'm offended, Sasha and Lloyd.
Oh, no.
I have watched.
No, seriously.
No, I seriously, because I found one not long ago and I told you about it. I was like, "What?"
But no, I'm genuinely happy. I'm genuinely happy when people do reach a point. And that doesn't help me, because obviously I'm trying to grow a YouTube channel and I want as many views and subscribers as possible. But I'm more interested in people healing. And I'm not necessarily demanding, like with the bridge analogy, I'm not demanding that everyone be on the bridge. I'm quite happy for people to make it over the bridge and find their own little pocket of freedom where they can just enjoy life.
But if it's any consolation, Lloyd, I only watch the videos that I appear in.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to forget
Harriet, we
the
knew
videos
that
I've
already.
You know, I actually can envision a future where the work you do, Lloyd, is no longer needed. The work I do, the work Sasha and Sherry does, is no longer needed. I am working hard to work myself out of a job. This isn't really a job, but working hard so I no longer have to do this. And I feel that if I no longer have to do this, then the world will be a better place because of it.
Sure. We have Watchtower Watcher saying, your best is better than most, Lloyd. Love from Australia. Thank you so much. And we have Phelan Wolf 89. Thank you so much for doing these videos. Has been a massive help in looking back on my time in the organization and being able to move on. That's so nice of you to say. Maybe just a word about what's in store for season 2 of The Last Days live stream. We are currently broadcasting simultaneously on Facebook, Twitch and YouTube. There's a little banner just to remind you if one of those is more suitable for you. There are different ways now to watch The Last Days live stream, not just YouTube. But as far as what we have in store, we will have the Last Days quiz, but not this Saturday. It will be the Saturday after. The reason being that I have allocated fixtures and a league. So rather than it just being a free-for-all, there will be actual fixtures of the Last Days quiz, and I'm pleased to announce that one of the new teams is Team Havilicious.
Who's on my team?
I don't know. You need to decide that, mate.
I'll be on your team, Javier.
All right.
That's really not helpful because I'm terrible at that.
Are we gonna have a draft or
Might need to draft, yeah.
No?
So it falls to Javier, and obviously there's Team D'Souza as well and Team O'Donnell. Will they be able to break the monopoly of Arthur's Knights?
Team.
Well, if we can, yeah.
I was going to say, Javier, jump on Arthur because he's really good at it.
I like to think that Arthur wins because
it's gonna be
there's
you and me.
some-
We got this.
yeah, Arthur wins because there might be some collusion from another power helping him.
Yeah, it's Russian influence. I think it's well established by this point. But yeah, please do join us we'll be on Saturdays and Wednesdays, and it's a bit confusing because of daylight savings time. I don't think that's fully settled, but basically it's 8:30 a.m. European time on Wednesdays and 5 p.m. European time, Central European time on Saturdays. However that works out, and as soon as I know what the time conversions are once daylight savings time is settled, I'll be posting those times so that you can plan it in your diaries. But yeah, we're back for season 2. And it will be, let's see, November, December, I think January, February, 4 months. So we'll see how that goes.
Can I just take a quick opportunity too to say further in what we were saying about finding support and people feeling like they need a community. We've got Eric here representing Recovering from Religion. Sometimes it's healthy to get out of the XJW bubble as well. You know, sometimes we're so consumed with XJW stuff. To break free and to expand our world. So if anyone would like to join Recovering from Religion, any of the meetups, there's plenty. How many to choose from?
There's one tomorrow.
There's support groups all over the world. If they'd like to join these meetups to have a chat about breaking free from religion and also coping mechanisms on how to thrive and to be the best we possibly can.
I can tell you that some of these online meetings have been rather scraping the bottom of the barrel because I was invited to one of them. But hopefully the caliber of guests will improve and people will find these enjoyable and healing events to attend. So yes, recoveringfromreligion.org is a very useful URL for you to check out. But that's it. That's everything we have. Who knows what's going to happen with the election, but try to remember, you don't have any control over it. You're just a passenger. If you voted, you've done your duty, but you just have to leave it to fate to decide how history unfolds and do your best within your own sphere of influence. But that's it. Please do remember to stay healthy, stay positive, and we will see you in the next show. Take care.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.